The other day I was walking back from Chipotle and I was thinking about the idea of sleeping slaves, which led me to thinking about fate. Everyone's fate is predetermined. The people we meet, the things that happen to us, disorders and illnesses we develop, all that is already set in stone before we're even born. Once these things happen to us, we can all think about how sad our lives are and curse the hand that we are dealt with and accept our fate, which will make us sleeping slaves. As it pertains to Jojo, we saw our cast choose to do the opposite. Welcome to today's video, where I'll be explaining the beauty behind the sleeping slaves concept of part 5 Golden Wind and how it is a central theme of the Arrow trilogy saga, which includes parts 4 to 6. Before we get into today's video, if you are new to the channel, welcome. Subscribe for more awesome Jojo videos where we will be reviewing themes, specific stand abilities, and breaking down character arcs. Now that we got that out the way, let us begin. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of part 5 until the prologue, but the Sleeping Slaves prologue is one of the things that stuck with me most throughout my read of Jojo, even after I finished all parts and caught up. For starters, what are sleeping slaves? Sleeping slaves are simply people who are controlled by their fate and blindly follow behind it. They accept their working fate and do little to none to change it. In Golden Wind, we meet these characters who are born into a world that's working against them. We meet Giorno. We find out that he was a boy who grew up in an abusive household with no one that loved him. He is treated like trash outside by the kids in the neighborhood, and he doesn't have a purpose for being here. No one cares about him, no one is his friend, and he is alone. His soul is just here. This all changes following his encounter with the injured gangster. After Giorno chooses to cover for the injured gangster, and the gangster shows him thanks by threatening his abusive father and getting the neighborhood kids to treat him better, Giorno decides to become a mafioso boss. He makes that his dream. As we see throughout part 5, Giorno's dream is his driving force. It's his reason for living, and it's what keeps him going. Now, most fans would say Giorno stops being a sleeping slave when he decides he wants to change their environment or join Passione, but that's not true. The moment Giorno decided to help the gangster was when he woke up from his slumber, as Giorno could have easily gave up the gangster and fallen under the idea that the world is cruel to him, so he should do the same. However, he didn't. He chose to do the opposite, as when he saw the injured mafioso alone on the ground, he saw himself in him too. Both of them were alone. Let's look at another character, Abacchio, a young man who after high school became a police officer. He wanted to do good for society. He came to learn that the very people he wanted to protect were devious and cruel, and the cycle of arresting these guys was essentially pointless considering they'd get out the next day through bail. And so Abacchio became a sleeping slave. He started to engage in corrupt acts himself, despite once wanting to be the police officer who did good for the environment. He came to the idea that there was no hope for this environment and he was better off joining everyone else. Following the guilt of his partner's death and the loss of his job after the news of him being a corrupt officer spread, he lost all hope when it came to life. However, after joining Bucciarati, he was able to regain the hope that things could change again. He was now working for a group that wanted to fight against the cruel environment that they were all born into, despite it being a hard and nearly impossible battle for them to win. And it was then he woke up from his slumber. Now let's take a look at someone who is the complete opposite of these two guys, one that you would consider a sleeping slave, Diavolo, the main antagonist of part 5, who believed he was in control of fate, but in reality he was the biggest sleeping slave of them all. Because Diavolo had the future sight and ability to erase time, thanks to his King Crimson, Diavolo developed the idea that he was invincible and that he could not be defeated. He believed he was chosen by fate and it was fated for him to stand victorious at the end over Passione. As we saw in the end, that overinflated his ego, which eventually led to his downfall, as Giorno and Passione were the ones standing at the end. Now these are just 3 examples. There are of course several other characters in Passione and part 5 that represent the sleeping slave concept. As stated in the beginning of the video, I think the whole sleeping slave theme represents not only part 5 but 4 and 6. During the final home stretch of part 4, the characters are supposed to lose to Kira every time he resets the clock. Yet rather than Hayato accepting that Kira was fated to win no matter what he tried, Hayato still kept trying no matter how impossible things seemed, dying over and over and over again. He does eventually manage to pull off something and outsmarts Kira by calling Josuke, who helps to defeat Kira. Hayato could have blindly followed behind his fate and let it control him, yet he chose to fight back. In part 6, everything goes Pucci's way. Like, that's no argument. Pucci was supposed to lose against Weather Report, yet he was able to get very lucky and win. Typically in the shonen genre, while the antagonist does get OP towards the end, the protagonist typically gets a power up to match the antagonist at the end. But that doesn't happen at all. It's Pucci's Stan who continues to get overpowered as we go into the final home stretch. Yet the gang continue to fight and make sacrifices till the very end as they continue to die one by one. Even after the rest of the crew dies, they still fight as Emporio defeats Pucci with the help of the Weather Report Stan. One of the things antagonists of part 4, 5, and 6 all have in common is that they are all bailed out at the last second. Immediately after Kira kills Hayato, Killer Queen develops a new Stan ability, Killer Queen Bites the Dust, which allows him to create a sort of time loop. Diavolo, right before he gets cornered by Passione, gets bailed out through the confusion Requiem created. Pucci not only gets Stan upgrades that are really overpowerful, but he has insane luck where in numerous cases he's supposed to die, yet that's not what happens. He manages to overcome the trial and get closer to his goal. All three of these characters reach a point where they feel as if it is fated for them to come out victorious at the end. They all believe that it is fate on their side, and no matter what obstacles they face along the way, they will prevail because fate can't let them down. That is their biggest downfall, and it's what makes them the sleeping slaves, as they let this idea control them. Then the biggest takeaway from the Arrow Saga is to accept your fate, but don't let it control you. What doesn't make one a sleeping slave is when they fight back against fate, regardless of what's supposed to happen, whether it be good or bad. It specifically means making the best attempt at striving for a better life, and it's that very attempt, regardless of what fate has in store, that makes our lives meaningful. Well, this is a pretty short video. I just want to get this out of the way. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Drop a like if you did. Definitely subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about the whole sleeping slaves concept. Let me know if I left anything out in the comment section. More JoJo videos coming along the way, and thank you guys so much for watching. Have an awesome rest of your day. Peace.